My thanks to both of you and all of you for being here, and again, welcome to wonderful Arizona. The first question is for you, Madam Ambassador. The López Obrador administration has identified a number of key priorities for Mexico. How do international trade and relationships fit into those priorities? And specifically, how important is it for Mexico and Arizona to maintain a strong trade relationship for mutual prosperity?
Thank you, Lorraine. I think I have mentioned briefly why it's so important. I mean, we need to grow economically faster than we have been growing in the latest years. We need to create more jobs. We need to integrate the south and southeast of Mexico to the progress that we have registered in the central and northern part of Mexico. So for that, we need more trade. We need more investment. President López Obrador has many plans on upgrading infrastructure in Mexico, particularly at the northern border and in certain parts of the south and southeast of Mexico. And there is not enough public money for that. So we need private investment. We need foreign direct investment. And of course, the US is our main investor in Mexico, and particularly the border states have many investments in Mexico. So for that to thrive, for trade and investment to thrive, we need a certainty, and we need a legal framework. And that legal framework that gives certainty is USMCA. And it is an agreement for the 21st century that covers many areas that were not covered by NAFTA, that also addresses some social questions like environmental issues, labor standards, small and medium enterprises, gender, and in consultations to indigenous groups. So for us, the relationship, the economic relationship with Arizona is key, as with the other border states, but Arizona is so close to the well-being of the northern part of Mexico and Sonora, and the USMCA ratification is also of utmost importance. Without it, it will be a catastrophe for the Mexican economy, but also for the border states' economy in the US, and it will be also a catastrophe for Canada. So that message has to go through very clear. We need USMCA ratification process because we need certainty, we need a legal framework, and we need to be stronger as a region in the world.
Thank you, Madam Ambassador. Governor Ducey, this question for you. Along the lines of the USMCA, just a few weeks ago, you sent a letter to the entire Arizona congressional delegation urging them to vote in favor of ratification of the USMCA. You have visited Mexico and Canada. Of course, you're hosting the ambassador here, and we have Canadian representation. Why is USMCA important for Arizona, the United States, and all of North America?
Thank you, Lorraine, and thank you for making the trip up from Tucson to be here today. The last time I saw Lorraine, she was grilling me on a debate stage, and I much prefer this setting. I also want to say thank you to the ambassador for all that she's doing and how outspoken she's being on the USMCA, the United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement. President Trump has been outspoken on what he thinks are the shortcomings of the NAFTA agreement. So this negotiation has now been going on for several years, and I was able to visit with the ambassador of the U.S. Trade Association, Bob Lighthizer, back in Washington, D.C., and he makes an incredible case as to how what was a rotary phone agreement, nearly 25 years old, has been brought into the 21st century, and the benefit that it will have for United States trade. And I think sometimes we can forget, or others can forget, how fortunate we are to have neighbors that are friends and allies and trading partners. And the ambassador did a terrific job talking about the 4 border states from the U.S. and the 6 border states from Mexico, and the power in that economy alone. So USMCA is an update. You can think of it as a new and improved NAFTA 2.0 that not only provides protections, but also opens markets. There were things that have happened in the last 25 years in terms of the internet, the cloud, digital computing that this agreement addresses. And I think the ambassador said it very well when we met before this luncheon in the governor's office, she said to me, if people care about Mexico, they will vote for the USMCA. And tongue-in-cheek, I called out Representative Lesko. Debbie Lesko's here today, because I miss Debbie Lesko. Debbie Lesko was in our legislature here in Arizona, and we've seen what we've been able to get done legislatively. I don't know what accolades the Congress will have going forward and what they can get done, but if I could, with humility, help them prioritize, I hope that they will take the politics out of this and put the country and North America before what's ever happening by ratifying the USMCA.
Ambassador, if I could ask you, what do you suppose the likeliness is of Mexico's legislature approving this plan as well?
I think it will pass the Mexican legislature. I will let you know more or less what is the timing. First, we have submitted, President López Obrador has submitted to Congress the amendment to the labor laws so that the labor laws can comply with Annex 23A of USMCA. And this passing of the labor laws, we are expecting to have it by the month of April. So it will be more or less coincidental by the time the ITC, the International Trade Commission, presents its report in Congress to around the 15th of April. So I would imagine that then the USMCA could be presented to Congress around May, or that is our hope. In Mexico, the USMCA that we call TEMEC, Tratado México-Estados Unidos-Canadá, only needs to go through the Senate. It doesn't need to go through the Chamber of Deputies. So in that sense, it's an easier process than in the US because it only needs to be approved by the Senate. But what we are seeing is first passing our labor laws, and then we are going to be very attentive. And we are doing this also, I think Canada is the same, that we are looking what is the timing of the US Congress, because we need to go more or less, if not exactly parallel, because the schedules of our Congresses are different. But just imagine if Mexico ratifies almost immediately, and then it doesn't get ratified in the US Congress. It would be a very difficult situation. So we are following what the process will be in the US. It is our expectation, of course, and I think we agree after having conversations with Ambassador Lighthizer, some congressmen, some senators, and also with my Canadian colleagues, that the best thing would be that USMCA get ratified in the 3 Congresses before the summer recess. Because if not, politics will make more difficult to take decisions on this. So we are working hard to comply with these dates and to have USMCA ratified before the summer recess. That means before August. So we will need all the lobbying from the Chamber of Commerce, the private sectors, letters to convince, to explain the benefits, and so it can really enter into force at the beginning of 2020 and just set a new era of economic cooperation among the 3 North American countries.
Thank you for that explanation. This question also for you, Ambassador, is trade between Arizona and Mexico continues to grow. The ability for goods and people to cross the border easily is certainly part of that. The Arizona-Mexico corridor study demonstrates that road and railroad infrastructure into central Mexico is very important. Talk with us a bit about the efficiency of the ports of entry and what the López Obrador administration plans to do to improve that connectivity through especially the federal highway system.
I would say that one of the priorities of President López Obrador is a special plan for the northern border, which wants to give a new impulse to the economic development of the northern border. That means adjusting the tax rates so that the tax rates at the border are similar to the tax rates in the US. the gasoline prices and also raise to minimum wage, so that difference of wages between the US and Mexico is not as big as it was. But also part of it has a special attention to infrastructure at the border. And when I say infrastructure, of course, it relates to ports of entry, to railroads, to highways, and we need to invest more. This is an area in which is very clear that more investment, both federal and local investment, is necessary. And we are working very hard now with the customs in Mexico, with Aduanas. We'll present its new development plan and the objectives for the future. And in this development plan, the consultations with the US have been going on. And also we will have this special group on border crossings very soon, so that we can define which are the priorities along the border. So we're working hard on it, and border infrastructure is key for this trade and development in the region.
Thank you. Governor, my favorite port of entry is the Castro Port of Entry in Douglas. However, last week, I spent 2.5 hours at the Mariposa Port of Entry in Nogales. I know that can happen, and there are things that you are working to do to improve the infrastructure when it comes to cross-border travel. Can you give us some specifics?
Certainly, and I saw Mayor Uribe here from Douglas, who certainly advocates for that port, and this is critical. This infrastructure that we have helps with our trade and all of the issues that we have at the border. If you think of trade in this year's budget, we've got a $700,000 investment for a cold house that will help us continue the trade that we have on agriculture and produce. And we had $134 million in our Mariposa port from SR 189 to I-19 that's going to allow trade to flow more quickly. I realize the issues that are happening at the border. We will, of course, want to think of both safety, trade, and security, and these investments allow us to do that, along with some of the tests that Mexico has been so excellent in helping us work together and sponsor, like our unified cargo processing. That was a test that was piloted in Arizona, and now it's being expanded to New Mexico, Texas, California, and all of the northern border states as well. So we're going to continue to not only put resources there, but also programs where we can have cross-border leaders and government officials work together to increase the trade footprint.
Thank you. A question for both of you. We'll start with you, Madam Ambassador. Can you speak to the importance of the Hispanic and Mexican community as an economic engine and a bridge between the U.S. and Arizona and Mexico? While trade and infrastructure, of course, invaluable, tourism also plays a key role between the two countries.
Yes, tourism is fundamental. I think I mentioned something in my speech. It's not just the many Mexicans that are key for tourism development in Arizona, and that they are the main source of income for tourism in Arizona, but also Arizonans coming to Mexico for tourism, for Puerto Peñasco, for Alamos, for many areas in which you can visit. But as I said, I think we have to work together for the future for binational destinations, and that also are related to improving the border infrastructure, so that we can guarantee a speed crossing and so that tourism from, for example, from Canada can come and enjoy, and tourism from Asia can come and enjoy. And I will never cease to underline the relevance of the Mexican community. I gave you some data when I was, addressing in my speech, but everywhere you go, 43% of the population in Tucson is of Mexican origin. Just in Tucson, it's every year $2.3 billion that come from the presence of Mexicans and the crossings of Mexicans. As I said, the U.S. cannot be explained today without the presence of the Mexicans. And I think that it's even more obvious in the case of Arizona. But also, we have to be ready to deal with future challenges, because Only today, this morning, I was reading an article of the Dallas Morning News saying Mexicans are not migrating anymore to the US. There are more Mexicans returning now to Mexico than coming to the US. So in a few years, there will not be enough workforce in the US, especially migratory workforce. You will have a lack of temporary workers, and we need to work on that, and we need to acknowledge the challenges that we will have together. So we are also hopeful in Mexico that in the future, in the exercise of the sovereignty, of course, of the US, the issue of immigration reform will be considered by Congress, and that immigration reform would be considered based on facts and realities. And the facts and realities is that the demographic profiles of Mexico and the US have complemented each other in the last years, but maybe not, that will not be in the future, and that our labor markets have been integrated, and that may not happen in the future. And what you will have in the future is a Mexican community that there will be more and more educated, more entrepreneurship. There will be more entrepreneurship in the Mexican community. They will create more jobs. They will ask for higher education. They will be one of the characteristics of the Arizona population, California, Texas, Illinois, and that this Mexican community, it should be a source of pride for Mexico, but it should be also a source of pride for the US because of the way they are so hardworking and the way they are committed to the future of the US and the future of Mexico.
Thank you. Governor, if you would share a bit of your thoughts regarding tourism.
Well, of course, we love the Mexican tourism dollar in the United States, and we love how many visits we have and how much you love to shop.
Yes. We are big shoppers, by the way.
And I know in Arizona it's something we value very much as well. The ambassador and I were visiting before this, and she talked to me about her visits to Tucson and to Flagstaff and to the Grand Canyon. She hasn't been to Sedona yet, but on her next trip. And I think we feel the same way. I mean, this ability to go to Puerto Penasco and call Rocky Point our beach and just the other beautiful places, whether it's Cabo or Puerto Vallarta or Cancun or Mazatlan. Not that I've been to all of these places, but I have, and they're beautiful. Like I said, we are fortunate to have Mexico as our neighbor, and there is so much that both of our peoples can access through this border.
Thank you. Ambassador, what are some ways that the average citizen or maybe even a small business here in Arizona can help foster or improve those business relationships between Mexico and the United States?
The role of small businesses, that's a good question. I think the biggest contribution would be the creation of jobs at both sides of the border, because most of jobs are created by small and medium enterprises. So the other area in which I think they can contribute, but at the same time they will need more support, is to train people and to open new areas of opportunity for businesses and for young population. And so I would assume that most of the jobs in Arizona and also in Sonora would come from small and medium enterprises.
Okay, thank you. Governor, you're very good at making friends with the Trump administration. You've met the new president of Mexico. What's the number one thing that the two countries should do together to build better relationships between the two?
I think sometimes in the United States we can take for granted the prosperity that we have as a nation. I was actually able to listen to Secretary Pompeo 2 weeks ago, and he talked about the United States' ability to create wealth is what gives us our footprint in the world. It's what allows us to be a military might and to make certain that we're able to correct bad actors that are out there. And I think if we can realize that this relationship that we have with Mexico can do so much more to expand that trade footprint, that ability to create wealth. And I know we talk a lot about the southern border in the United States, but we should also think about the southern border in Mexico and the issues that are happening in South and Central America. And it really is a prosperous Mexico and a Mexico that is a partner that will help us together deal with these very intractable problems. So I think the trade relationship, the USMCA, is something that we can embrace. It's not only great for prosperity and partnership, it's great for the peace of the United States and North America.
Okay, thank you.
I couldn't agree more.
Ambassador, we have one last question, and the person says, welcome to Arizona, and tell us something about yourself that we may not know.
Well, something that you may not know, that my grandmother was American, that she was born in Laredo from a French father and an American mother that came from New Hampshire, and that she was taken to Mexico when she was 5 years old, at the beginning of the revolution in Mexico in 1910, and she lived all her life in Mexico undocumented. So there was this lady, 180, red hair, green eyes, called Claire Janet Pierce, Doña Clarita for the Mexicans. And she didn't have a birth certificate from the US because it was in the middle of the revolution, and she never had papers in Mexico. And she was very happy with 8 children, which I am the eldest of 37 cousins. And so we also have American blood in our veins with my grandmother coming. And she was not taken to Mexico City. Oh, no. She was born in Laredo, and she was taken to La Huasteca Potosina in San Luis Potosí, which is really something, huh? It's really jungle. And so that is something that you don't know. And the other thing that you may not know is that I was a classical ballet dancer for many years. And I said many years ago and many kilos ago, because you need to be very, very thin to be a dancer. And I danced professionally 2 years, but I started to have a lot of problems with my feet, my knee. And I said, well, to be a dancer, you need to trust your brain to memorize the ballets and everything, the music, but you need to trust your body. And the body was failing me. So I said, I will just trust my brain. I will go to university and be a diplomat.
Okay, we've learned where Governor Ducey likes to vacation and where you're from. Thank you so much for sharing. We'll begin with some closing statements. We'll begin with you, Ambassador.
Well, my closing statement would be just to say muchas gracias, many thanks. It was an honor to share this lunch with you. I'm very much impressed of how many of you decided to attend and to share these moments with us, because it means that Mexico signifies something for you, that you care about Mexico and Arizona relationship, and above all, that you care about our shared future. So I just can say thank you very much. Muchas gracias. We had a famous singer in Mexico called Pedro Vargas, and he would always end his show saying, muy agradecido, muy agradecido, muy agradecido.
In closing, I would just like to amplify what the ambassador said and say again how grateful I am for your visit to Arizona, and let everyone in the audience know how thankful I am for you. This Arizona-Mexico Commission has been a light for the other states around our country to see what is possible with partnership and cooperation with Mexico. This couldn't have happened without the people inside this room. And I said to the ambassador earlier today, and I've said this to Governor Pavlovich, this should be the norm going forward. This should be the relationship that we continue to develop and grow and benefit from mutually. This should be what is customary and normal for the state of Arizona. With your help and support for this mission of the Arizona-Mexico Commission, it will continue, and looking forward to visiting you again soon. Thank you.
You're always welcome in Mexico and in DC. And I will just say at the end, gracias a los cónsules mexicanos en Arizona. Thanks to the Mexican consuls in Arizona for the great job you are doing. Thanks to the American consuls in Sonora for the great job you're doing to bring us together. Gracias.
Thank you.